Tom from Brooklyn. Lots of wonderful things and exciting things happening in American history today. And as I started my talks many times before, I tell you the only difference between history and current events is the names and places of the events and the victims. As most of you people are aware, the Atari group, a bunch of Christian patriots, I guess you would call them, a militia unit made up of fellows that cross-trained, was set up on some trumped-up charges and arrested and betrayed by their own, by the way. Interesting situation. Smart people deal with facts, okay? And morons are only motivated by trust. We live in a very uncertain world right now, so folks, try to maintain at all times your intellectual fog lights. Don't allow yourself to be distracted from the main issues by a bunch of rhetoric and a bunch of nonsense, okay? First off, let me give you a little heads up on what had happened with the Hatari situation. I don't know what put them into the situation where, well, I do, but I'm not going to disclose at this time what put them into the jurisdiction and the surveillance of the federal authorities. But it did come through the local authorities first. And the Hatari group was infiltrated, okay? And basically there was two infiltrators. One came later, one came first. Now, the reason that the local authorities didn't pick up the Hatari individuals, any of the members of the Hatari group, was because they were told by the people that give the county their funding that there was federal cooperation in that group already. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, what they basically did was they said one of their members had passed away. We'll call him Dan because that's what he called himself. In reality, he will be probably showing up in court as UC1, okay, Undercover 1. All right, that's how the feds would, federal guys would designate a either confidential informant or an agent. So basically, what they did was they created a situation where Dan died, so they could extract him from the group, so that they could, you know, round these fellows up. Whether the charges are legitimate or illegitimate is really immaterial right now. I'm just dealing with the setup. So basically, Dan dies, but nobody knows Dan's last name. Dan doesn't have a last name. Dan doesn't have a death certificate. Dan doesn't have a funeral. The funeral is when you have a body and people go look at it, right? You don't have a wake. It's when they have a party and the guy is right there. It's a send-off party. But they had a memorial service that was provided for them by Dan's best friend, which nobody knows either, but we'll call him UC2 or Scott, okay? Now, these two guys working in concert convinced these Christian patriot group to go to a secluded warehouse out of the way, that even if there was a gunfight, nobody would hear anything, okay? To go to an alleged memorial for a guy that they did not even know his last name. For a body that nobody ever seen, for an obituary that was never published, and no Dan anything on file for that period of time at the county clerk's office for a death certificate. I'm not a smart guy, but I wouldn't have went, okay? Smart people go by facts. when you don't know somebody, you have no obligation to go. And usually there's something stinky with it in this type of a situation. And they proved themselves. When they got to the warehouse, they were arrested. The people that were let go were Lady Pitbull, her husband, and their son. Okay? It was the reason that they were let go is just a week before, Lady Pitbull was doing some rescue work for the county sheriffs, and they said, well, they weren't part of it back in the time when the complaint was originally generated. Okay? It wasn't filed until Wednesday, the 23rd. Not that I've really looked into this, of course, but, you know, I just looked into it a little bit. And I've seen all kinds of stuff and learned all kinds of different things about different people, and I'm really, really upset. The actions of certain people that should have had a little bit more responsibility or was not addressed, and where they were while all this was happening has been addressed. And I've gotten many phone calls, and I don't know why they call me. I'm in Pennsylvania. They should be calling Michigan and worrying about it up in Michigan. And all kind of distractions, mobilizing troops on the dark side of the moon and all over the country because a bunch of people went to a funeral, or, excuse me, I'm not going to cloud the issue, went to a memorial for somebody that they didn't know. Stupid. Totally stupid. Okay? So, these people sit in jail. Alright? Now, they said, well, I read the complaint, and the complaint said something about pipe bombs and stuff like that. And you know, a little light went on my head, and it reminded me a great deal of the Starr and McCraney case down south, where these militia guys, one guy was a plumber and the other guy was an electrician, and they were in the militia, so they had reloading supplies. They had bomb making materials, right? Okay, well, they were taken into custody, and during the trial, through disclosure and the evidence given and testimonies given, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms actually admitted that for sight enhancement, they put the bombs on the real bombs on the property, and that was that. Well, the attorney that was handling the case was pretty sure she was going to get the thing thrown out of court the next day, until the Olympic bomb went off in the Olympic Park in the Atlanta area, killing one person, and a pipe bomb was used. There was not much deliberation the next day. They went right into jury deliberation and came up with a guilty charge against them. So, folks, remember me when I tell you. Look at this face. Believe me, it's hard to forget. It's sunburned. I'm telling you something. If you can't have a brain and you're having a real hard time connecting the dots, okay, have a memory, okay? Another situation is don't allow yourself to be distracted by religious rhetoric. When you're not buying into somebody's nonsense and redirection constantly, they will attack your next, or rely on your next belief system. Okay? You don't want to know what is going to transpire, and you're going to have a hard time accepting what's going to go down. But I'm telling you something. They've just relabeled the barn, used a formula that they know works, and it's going to be really, really messy. You're going to have to learn change. And I want to tell you one final thing here, okay? It wasn't the Nazis that loaded all them Jewish people on them trains to their death. It was their religious leaders. So, if you deal with your intuition, you deal with things clearly. Don't allow yourself to be clouded by your belief system. and deal with things and keep them not in God's hands, but in your own hands, you'll be better off. Remember something, without a good propaganda campaign, they never would have got those people on those trains. Use your brains, folks, and stay off the trains. You have a wonderful weekend.